Hello everyone, my name's Nitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT17, and BT17 offers us lots of new and powerful tools in order to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the latest version of AncientGreymon. So AncientGreymon is more or less an offshoot of what Red Hybrids was doing because they're playing a lot of cards and similar with each other, utilizing that same core engine. It's just this time we're going to be adapting the deck to incorporate more of a warp effect to get up into our AncientGreymon instead of utilizing the warp to get up into an EmperorGreymon. And there's more ways to be able to warp up into Ancient now versus the one singular way we have to get up into Emperor, allowing us to have some better usability on being able to warp up into our Digimon and punch as hard as we possibly can. The deck actually has a lot going for it because it still has that same consistency that Red Hybrids already had. Then we also have the speed increase because of the multiple different warp points on top of the reusability of our cards and overall higher levels of usability with being able to approach what the deck is able to do. And on top of that, we are still kind of meta relevant because we do have something that can try to answer what the meta is asking of us by having high DP numbers to be able to scale big walls. The biggest weakness of the deck, and the only real thing that's kind of just holding it back, is the current state of the game. I know that sounds really weird, but Red right now isn't necessarily in the best of spots because their removal type is deleting Digimon, which right now is the weakest form of removal just because there's so many different things that counter it, like various protections, on top of the fact that there's just a lot of strong Digimon with on-delete effects, so even if we are deleting their Digimon, we're not actually gaining that much additional value for deleting their Digimon, and half the time we actually could be helping them. But regardless, I still think this is one of the better decks to come out of BT17, and it's really fun in all of the different ways that you could build and approach Red Hybrids, whether you're doing a pure AncientGreymon deck, a updated EmperorGreymon deck, or kind of a hybrid deck utilizing both of them. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile and see what we're working with. Starting off with the Digitamers, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of the BT14 Koromon because it is just the de facto best egg for the deck, being one of the easiest to draw engine eggs that we have. And if you wanted to run a 5th Digitama, again, depending on your build, I would highly recommend you run something that actually is going to be synergizing with the deck, but draw is all you're really looking for when it comes to how you want to utilize your eggs. Then when it comes to the main level 3s, this is just going to be the Flamemon lineup. So it's just going to be running 4 copies of the 3 best Flamemons that we currently have, which is going to be BT7, BT12, and BT17 respectively. So BT17 and BT7 are doing some very similar things. They're both on-play searching cards. Then on top of that, they both have the on-delete ability to basically play out your Takuyas. Then the odd one out is going to be a BT12 Flamemon. So this is another pretty decent searching card by allowing us to discard a hybrid traded card to draw 2. So it's not necessarily digging for specific cards, but it allows us to potentially see more cards out of our deck, which is never a bad thing, especially depending on what you're trying to do to set it up. The inheritable ability is plus 2000 DP, so depending on what you're trying to utilize and how you're trying to warp, this actually isn't that bad in the raising area. But it all just depends on the situation and what kind of cards that you have at any given moment on what Flamemon is actually going to be good in the raising area and what you're going to want to use and prioritize to search or dig with. Then when it comes to the level 4s, I'm mostly just going to be running the cards that are helping enable the warp up into our AncientGreymon. So that's going to be 4 copies of the promo Agunimon. So this is a bit of an older card, but it's still really good for how this deck wants to play because we just hide a Flamemon in the back, move it out, Digivolve into Agunimon, then Agunimon can swing and utilize its when attacking ability to Digivolve into an AncientGreymon from our hand for only 2 memory. We can ignore the Digivolution requirements, but it does delete itself at the end of the turn, which our Emperor Greymons have on delete effects, so it's not actually as bad as it seems, and we're going to be utilizing this warp to be able to get up into an Ancient and punch really hard, really quickly. And then when it comes to the other level 4s of the deck, that's just going to be the brand new BT17 Agunimon and BT17 Burning Greymon, both at 4 copies of each. So the Burning Greymon is kind of what's enabling the warp potential, utilizing the BT17 Agunimon to go up into our Ancient, so that way we could utilize its when attacking ability to be able to Digivolve into a hybrid traded Digimon from our hand with a reduced cost of 1, which, as we can see with our Agunimon, means that we could Digivolve into Agunimon for free, and Agunimon's when Digivolving ability, if he has a Burning Greymon in its Digivolution source, or we have a blue or green Tamer on our field, then we get a Digivolve into an Ancient Greymon from our hand for a cost of 3, and ignore its Digivolution requirements, and again, just like the promo Agunimon, delete the Digimon at the end of the turn, which again is not that bad. They both have the same inheritable ability of giving plus 2000 DP generically, which is really important to make sure we can make our Digimon as strong as possible to hit over the opponent's Digimon or walls, because the Burning Greymon does also have the nice added ability of Raid to try to control the opponent's field, a little bit different than what Red Hybrids usually does. Then when it comes to the level 5s, you kind of don't have to run level 5s if you really don't want to. You could build this deck in a couple of different ways. I just like having the safety of level 5s to have alternative playlines available to me. So I'm going to be running 2 copies of the BT17 Aldemon, because this is, again, another really good card to utilize with the promo Agunimon to make sure that we have another easy way to Digivolve up into our AncientGreymon and hit relatively hard, because it has this ability that triggers from our hand, where we get to place an Agunimon and a Burning Greymon from our trash under a Takuya and Digivolve it as if it was a level 4 red Digimon for a Digivolution cost of 3. So that's going to be the ideal way on how we want to use this card, is off of our Tamer. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than what it normally should be, unless you're utilizing Burning Greymon to Digivolve with its when attacking ability, but the hand ability is the preferred way you're going to want to use this card, because of the promo Aldemon being able to utilize its inheritable ability to reduce the cost of Digivolving. Then he just comes with a nice handy when Digivolving ability to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less, which is not bad at being able to snipe a wide variety of Digimon that we might need to get off the field before we go up into our Ancient. Then on top of that, it has a nice inheritable ability that's doing the exact same thing as what we've seen in the BT7 Aldemon, being able to turn off security option effects. Then, speaking of the BT7 Aldemon, I'm still going to be running at least 2 copies of this card, because it's still just that good of a card to use, because of, again, that inheritable ability of being able to make our attacks into the opponent's security as safe as possible, but the fact that it also has this nice cost reduction attached to it if we Digivolved on top of a Digimon that has a Tamer in its Digivolution source, so we could use this with Burning to Digivolve for free into Aldemon, and that'll trigger its when Digivolving ability to be able to give him plus 4000 DP, so between him and the inheritable of our Burning Greymon, it's going to be a nice plus 6000 DP boost for a level 5 Digimon to hit relatively hard. And speaking of our heavy hitters, next I'm going to be running a split between the BT17 AncientGreymon and the BT4 AncientGreymon. So depending on how your approach to the deck is and what you want to try to prioritize, one might be better than the other, but it's still important to run both because, well, they're both AncientGreymons, which is what the deck is centered around. So I'm just deciding to split it down the middle and run more of a generalized version, just because they have their own strengths and weaknesses. So as a result, I'm going to be running 3 copies of AncientGreymon from BT4. This is the card that's probably going to be hitting hitting the hardest, but it's still really good because its on delete ability, which we know off of our level 4s, is going to happen quite often, where we get to still play a red level 4 or lower hybrid traded Digimon from our hand for free, which the best ones are probably going to be the Flamemons, unless you think that the level 4 you could play off of this is going to stick. But I think we have a little bit better things that we could do with our level 4s, but still setting up that level 3 to be able to dig in search is not bad either. And the effect that's allowing this card to punch as hard as possible is where during your turn, for each Digimon in this Digivolution source with Greymon in its name or hybrid form in its trait, we get to get security attack +1. So if we're just doing a basic combo, it's always going to be hitting for at least 3, if not 4 security checks in one single turn. And I'm also going to be running 3 copies of AncientGreymon. This isn't going to be dealing as much damage, but it has a higher level of usability because of that Digicross ability between Agunimon and Burning Greymon, where we could just hard play this card for 6 to be able to get its on play and when Digivolving ability off to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with as much DP or less than this Digimon's DP. Then he just naturally has security attack +1, so he's always going to be hitting for 2 checks, and he has a nice on delete ability that allows us to actually reutilize our cards because we get to return 1 Tamer and 1 red hybrid traded Digimon from our trash to our hand, and then we get to play a Tamer, doesn't even specify what color, from our hand for free. So it's at least always replacing itself with a Tamer versus replacing itself with a Digimon, but the fact that we still can grab back our red hybrid traded Digimon means that we're not necessarily afraid of our cards being in our trash because we have ways of grabbing them back. Then when it comes to the level 7s, you could run a level 7. I didn't exactly have space for one, but the 2 best level 7s that you'd want to include or think about is going to be either Gallantmon Crimson Mode Ace as just another removal option, and if it sticks around, it could actually be a good game finisher, or BT5 Omnimon, just because he is an alternative game finisher, having a very easy way to be able to utilize him. Then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm just going to be keeping it simple and running a straight Takuya lineup. This time it's going to be of the BT12 Takuya, running him at 4 copies, because he's the general memory setter Tamer for the deck, and trust me, with your combos, you kind of do want to have as much memory as possible, so you could potentially do more with your turn. Then he has the nice inheritable ability where it's just another plus 2000 DP boost, and while the Digimon has 10,000 or more DP, it gains an ability that allows you to gain 2 memory when your Digimon checks an opponent's security, so that way we could then use that memory to digivolve into another hybrid or use for various other things. And likewise, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the brand new BT17 Takuya as an alternative way to gain some extra memory, because at the start of our main phase, if the opponent has a Digimon, that's how we're going to be gaining a memory. So between the 2, we could have our turn start at 4 memory relatively easily, if not more. Then I'm also going to be liking the fact that the inheritable ability isn't necessarily gaining us memory, but instead it's allowing us to actually have access at the piercing ability, so that way we can make sure that we're always going to be dealing damage as long as we're deleting the opponent's Digimon by battle, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to stop unless they have some battle immunity or armor purge. Then when it comes to the option lineup, I'm just electing to go for a nice, well-rounded option lineup, utilizing 2 copies of Crimson Blaze as the wide body removal and to try to stop the opponent from playing Digimon by effects. Then I'm going to be utilizing 2 copies of Ancient Guardian Deity. This is the card that's allowing us to play our AncientGreymon even cheaper. So between this option and Digicrossing, we'll be able to play out our AncientGreymon for essentially 2 less, which is pretty good at being able to just hard slam a Mega to stick on the field and be annoying with. But it also allows us to return a hybrid or 10 warrior traded card from our trash to our hand, which is really good because we could grab back our ancients utilizing this card, and then we also get to play a 10 warriors or a tamer with an inheritable ability and reduce the play cost by 4, allowing us to essentially either play a tamer for free if we're just grabbing back the ancient, or play the ancient if we already have the Digicross lined up. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Atomic Inferno because this is just helping us push even more damage. So most of the time we're going to be using this on our level 4s when we're going to be swinging, so that way we could Digivolve by our abilities and to be able to keep the buffs on the Digimon that way. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Red Memory Boost. If you wanted, this could easily be Gravity Crush. It doesn't really matter. It's just a card to help us gain 2 memory later. And for the most part, this is just my interpretation of the deck. There's a lot of different things that you could do with the deck to kind of spice it up, as I kind of already mentioned before. It really just depends on the type of tech and tools that you want to incorporate and utilize, and which of the ancients you want to prioritize as the main and which one you want to be the sub. So this is more of just a base build for you to use and go off of to be able to start to experiment with what you want based on the cards that you have access to and the meta that you're expected to play against. And if you're curious on what a more Emperor-focused red hybrid build is looking like, the majority of it doesn't really change a whole lot outside of some of the level 4s that we could start teching in. You could even tech in and change up the level 5 lineup a little bit, but I like it utilizing the Ancient in red hybrids for the more Emperor-centric build, just to help act as an extra Emperor when you don't see or have him. But for the most part, there's still even more customization that you could put inside of the deck, just because there are a lot of red hybrid-based cards and just hybrid-based cards in general. We also do have the Greymon builds utilizing the Bond of Courage engine as an alternative way to utilize the Ancient Greymons, on top of the fact that we just have lots of good generic rookies like Ukamons that we could think about utilizing, as well as some good generic Tamers like Louis and Analog Youth as well, again, all depending on what you have access to and the build you're trying to target. And it's not like this deck is devoid of any upgrades in the future, just because we know in BT18 we're going to be getting a slew of new hybrid cards that'll further enhance what this deck is capable of. But that's all I really have on this deck. Feel free to tell me your thoughts about the deck down in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video to be helpful and informative. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.